This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to A Geek Leader and episode 44. Today we've got a special guest. We have Nicole Greer from the Vibrant Coach. And Nicole and I go back for a while. We actually in 2014 we gave a TED Talk at the same TEDx event in Hickory, North Carolina, and that's where we met. I've also been a student of Nicoles through one of her leadership courses that she did. And she's just a great person, and she has this method called S.H.I.N.E that we're going to go up over and just talk about general leadership, some very practical things you can do. She even has some really good questions to ask her in one-on-ones and a lot of good stuff like that. So give it up for Nicole Greer. And we're live. Got Nicole Greer here on today's episode of A Geek Leader. And Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what you do now?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Yeah. So, I started out being a leader in the restaurant business. And I think everybody in their entire lifetime needs to work in a restaurant. It teaches you customer service. It teaches you self-control. It teaches you how to be nice. It teaches you how to get stuff done in a hurry. So that's where I started. And then from there, I got into property management and ended up being like the marketing and training director for a great company called Summit. And then I stayed home with my children for 8 years, and that was probably the best leadership experience I ever had in my entire life because I was responsible for the upbringing of these two people that needed to be gainfully employed someday and good citizens, and I'm here to announce that both of them have both achieved that. So I'm very excited about that achievement in my life. And now I am what we call the Vibrant Coach. I have my own company called Vibrant Coaching, and I'm up in Concord, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte.
Oh, awesome. And I actually got my first real job at Arby's, so I was in the restaurant business for a little while. Actually got promoted there to a shift manager for one point, which was it was an interesting experience for sure. But I have to agree with you 100% about kids. I know we've got 3 now, but just having children definitely changes your perspective on leadership, the importance of it, and why you need it, and how to be better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I know your kids are little right now, but mine are 25 and 19, and it's so cool the stages that you go through, so now, my 25-year-old son, now we talk about recipes and we exchange, information on what videos to watch on YouTube. So we have this totally different relationship. So it's a lot of fun.
It's surprisingly similar because my 7-year-old is showing me which videos to watch on YouTube as well.
That's great. That's great. Well, one of the songs we listened to growing up on Mom's playlist in her Suburban was Sarah's Smile by Daryl Hall and John Oates. And so we just went, the 4 of us, the 2 adult children and David and I, we just went to the concert. And then he's like, Mom, did you know Daryl Hall has this whole thing called Daryl's House on YouTube? And it's like been my favorite thing for the last week or so. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
That's good. So now that you've kind of been a leader for a while and kind of moved into it, and you're getting into, or you've been for a while into coaching, can you tell me a little bit about how coaching helps a leader develop, and what are some of the things that you, as a leader, you can find out when you have a coach or a mentor that you don't get and you can't find out when you don't have a mentor or don't have a coach?
Well, I think most of the leaders that are out there are like flying blind. Because here's the truth about how corporate America or any company really works is it kind of goes back to this old book called The E-Myth. And this is a book by Michael Gerber. If you don't have this book, you need this book on your shelf. So write this down, Michael Gerber, The E-Myth. And it talks about the entrepreneurial myth. And the problem is inside companies, we'll have somebody who's really, really technically good at their job. And I would imagine this is very true in the IT world. And John, you correct me if I'm wrong. But it's like this guy's really great at coding or he's really great at this particular thing. And so we promote him into a leadership position. But the reality is he knows how to do the technical work, but he doesn't know how to do the people work per se. So a lot of people who are in charge of others are flying blind because they've not been taught how to lead. And so having a coach can do that for you. And a coach can help you learn to give people feedback, help you, coach and counsel around different scenarios with regard to personality or the character or lack of character of people on your team. So it's like another person to help you kind of navigate all of the relationship work.
Yeah, I've heard about the E-Myth. I heard Tim Ferriss talk about that quite a bit on his podcast, and I haven't checked it out yet, but it is in my queue for Audible. So maybe in the next month or two I'll get to it.
There you go. Yeah, it's a classic. It was like written like in the early 90s or something, but like if you read it, you're like, this is totally relevant today.
Yeah, when I was looking it up on Audible a few weeks ago, actually, I saw that there's an E-Myth Revisited edition out now. So I don't know if he's like revamped it or...
Yeah, he probably updated it because, like I said, it's like old now. But it's totally relevant.
So one of the things that I've noticed when I first got my first mentor and was trying to be a better leader, there was a lot of things that it was like you said, you're flying blind. You have a lot of blind spots. And I remember I was talking to him about turnover because I had a lot of people quitting my job and a lot of people are quitting jobs that when they worked for me. So I had some empty spots. And I kept saying, well, it's all because of, Charlotte's pay is much better than where we're at, and people want to go work for the banks. And then he just looked at me and says, you ever thought it's you? And I was like, whoa. But I think that's one of the things that we get. We can't see ourselves, unless you look in a mirror, but you don't have that mirror unless you have a coach or a mentor that can kind of reflect back some of yourself back to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. So, for example, the most powerful question that a leader can ask themselves is this question. You're going to love this question, John. What is it like to experience me? Like, that's the first question the leader has to ask themselves. I mean, like if you went out of the room and you came back into the room and there are all the people that work for you that you lead and they didn't know your name, but they knew everything about you. They'd had several interactions with you. They had been with you for years. Your question to yourself is, what word or adjective would they use to describe me upon walking back in the room, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you can get your head wrapped around what they experience, that's what you're really trying to manage as a leader, is the experience of being led.
That's good. And so... How would so let's say I have a mentor and I have a leader and they ask me that question. How do I find out the answer to that question? Well,
the way I do it with people is I take them through my methodology. And as you know, my company's called Vibrant Coaching. Mm-hmm. And so I have my own coaching methodology, and it's S.H.I.N.E, which is S.H.I.N.E. And so the S stands for self-assessment. So the first thing a leader can do to figure out what is it like to experience me is that they can do some assessments, right? So I love this assessment that I have that's called the Path Element Profile. In fact, I have delivered it twice at Inspiration Network to people there, and they really respond to it in a great way. But it helps you kind of see, do I show up as a fiery, driven, ambitious, loud, driven kind of leader, which is a fire, or am I fun? Am I outgoing? Am I inspirational? Am I a wind leader? Am I a water leader? Am I go with the flow, supportive, accommodating, or am I earth, solid, steady, reliable, and full of structures and systems? So it helps people kind of see how they show up. And then the second part of self-assessment, the S in S.H.I.N.E, is to then look at, okay, if this is how I'm hardwired as a leader, what character traits do I need to work on that shape that personality to make it beautiful, right? Because we've all got this beautiful part of us and then this, part of us that needs working on.
So, you can say the ugly part. That's fine.
What's that?
You can say the ugly part. Yeah.
It's the ugly part. That's right. Yeah. So, the good, the evil, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the self-assessment. That's the first part. And then I think the other part is really getting feedback from people. And there's a lot of different 360s out there. And I have a 360 that I also use with leaders that helps them see the character traits that other people see. Most leadership assessments or 360s, they're based on skills. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the wrong way to look at leadership. I think leadership is more about the quality of your character. I think you do need some skills, like you should be able to stand up in front of the room and speak to your people. Like you need those kind of skills. You do need to be organized. But I think you need those whether you lead or you don't lead. You really need to find out if you're showing up healthy in the quality of your character. So that self-assessment is the first step.
Okay, going back to that S.H.I.N.E, what is the H-I-N-E?
Okay, well, the H stands for habits, and so there are some very, very important habits of a leader, and here I'm going to give you three real quick. First one is every leader needs to do some kind of reflection. It needs to at least be weekly. Okay, so for example, one of the things that I do every single week, you can't see it, but it's right here. I call it the positive focus. Okay, so every week the leader needs to sit down and be quiet and think about the previous week. And I call it the positive focus because I think it's so important for the leader to have positive energy. So instead of like being driven all the time by problems and issues and concerns and worries and budgets, we should sit down and we should say, okay, what did we do this past week that is awesome? I mean, where did we have some wins? And like get them documented. And then when you go to meet with your people, most leaders have like a weekly meeting or something. You start with the positive focus, right? So you need some kind of reflection that is positive, so it gets the positive juju going. The other habit is giving feedback. This dovetails nicely with the positive focus. So if you notice that one of the people on your team did something awesome, you need to immediately go to them, hopefully face-to-face or like through Skype or through Zoom or something where you can see their face and they can see yours. You want to give them what I call a positive C3, which is this piece of feedback that talks about, the circumstances, the conduct you saw, and the consequences that that person's activity has on getting us to our KPI or our budget or our goal or whatever. So giving people great feedback. And then the other one would be to plan your week. I find that so many leaders do not plan their week, and then when they have to meet a deadline, all heck breaks loose, and everybody's under the gun, and the team suffers because the leader's not planning well. Yeah. So those are three number one habits.
I struggle with the giving feedback portion of that. I know I try to have a positive. I try to use gratitude, do gratitude. So I try to think of every week. I try to do this every day. 3 things that I'm grateful for that day that happened. It could be as simple as I'm grateful that my daughter cleaned up the mudroom today. Or I'm grateful that we completed this project on time. And I try to write up three things that I'm grateful for every day. Feedback's tough for me because sometimes I feel like I feel uncomfortable celebrating someone else.
Yeah, well, that's curious. We should coach around that.
That's right.
Well, I will tell you. Okay, so here I'll give you a really good reason to give people a positive feedback. Okay, so this comes from another book. It's another old book, an oldie but a goodie. The guy that wrote the 5-Minute Manager, Ken Blanchard. There we go. Okay, this is another Ken Blanchard book, and if all y'all out there that do not know the name Ken Blanchard, please Google and watch YouTube videos immediately. But anyway, so Ken Blanchard used to talk about, it was How Full Is Your Bucket is the name of the book. It's this little skinny leadership book, this thing. And essentially what the book says is that, everybody on your team is walking around and they have a bucket. And all day long, they're trying to get this bucket filled up so they are fulfilled. You get the thing here. So anyway, so they're fulfilled. And so people need positive deposits in their bucket. So for example, if I said to you, John, today when we were getting on the Skype call, okay, so that's the first part of the feedback, which is circumstances. So you got to be very specific about giving people good feedback because we only want to tell them the good behavior around the right circumstances. So for example, I wouldn't want to say, great job, because you have no idea what I'm talking about. You're like, right. Oh. Okay, and you could have done 3 things right and 2 things wrong today, but I told you great job, so now you think all 5 things are good. So I have specific, right? So I say, today as we were getting on the Skype call, okay, you were patient, kind, and made me feel at ease. So these are 3 behaviors that I want to get out of John more of. I want more patience for John, more kindness. I want more of that. So I'm very specific about the behaviors I saw. And then I say, consequently, I feel really good about being on this podcast with you and about our collegial status as being buds, right? So now it's very clear. So when I give these deposits into somebody's bucket, they feel good, right? Now, here's the thing. Oftentimes, as leaders, we got to correct people. And this is the kind of feedback, like you think you hate giving a bad feedback or good feedback, try to give them bad feedback. That's really stinks, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So the thing is, statistically, this has been proven that you have to give 8 pieces of positive feedback before you can give 1 piece of corrective. Because if their bucket is empty, they're going to go negative on you. Right? So, you've had an employee go negative on you. You're telling them, you cannot do this. Right? And they're like, what? And they have this attitude, and then they go negative on you. But if you told them 8 great things over the past 2 weeks, and then you come to them and you say, hey, I need you to correct this particular behavior, they're like, oh, I'm sorry. And the reason why they're remorseful is because they trust you now. Mm-hmm. They know you care. So the feedback thing is so, so important, but it's missing. It's missing out there in the world.
That's right. Okay, I get that. Jumping back in on this S.H.I.N.E, we've got the S and the H. Let's get back to the I.
Okay, so the I is about integrity. Okay,
good one.
And John, people are really confused about integrity because everybody thinks they've got it, and none of us have it all the time. Mm-hmm. Because here's the deal about integrity. Integrity comes and goes, right? So, if I tell you, oh, I love my husband, but then I gossip about him or tell some story about him, over here that's unflattering, then I'm out of integrity. Because you protect the ones you love, right? So, that's something. So a lot of times our words and our thoughts and, the things we do are not the highest integrity. In fact, I was coaching a person last week, and she was telling me how this person on her team was charging all sorts of things to the company credit card, in the name of entertaining the client. Mm. She's like, it was ridiculous. So, in this case, it's kind of like, okay, well, what are you going to do with this guy? You got to go to him and you got to give him that feedback, right? Because if you don't question his integrity and get him straightened out, who also loses their integrity? Me.
Yep.
Because I didn't say stop charging all of this to the company, right? So integrity comes and goes, and so we work on character. And if anybody's curious about that, I have this really cool document, and it has all 48 character traits, or what I like to call vibrant virtues, and it shows you what the ideal is, and then when you have too much of that character trait, how it shows up, and how when you don't have enough of it, how you show up, because it's kind of like on a bell curve. So it's a really cool document, but it's all about developing character.
Okay, and a lot of this seems like it relates to the the perception of those that see you and how they perceive you and how they see you. Because we all feel like you said, we all feel like we have integrity, but we're seeing it from our perspective and our lens, not from how other people view us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, for example, me, and obviously the people on this call or this podcast that are listening to it, they're like, she's got a lot to say. Because I do. I have a lot of words. And I will tell you, my whole life, certain people look at me and they think she talks too much. Right? So there's this thing about being enthusiastic and excited. But then, depending on the person watching me, enthusiasm can be overdone and can be looked at as over emotional, or, my brother used to call me a spaz. You know what I mean? So it can be overdone. But then there are people in the world that you're like, oh my gosh, are they alive? Do they have any enthusiasm? Do they smile? What is going on with this person? So, it's this golden mean, and it comes from Aristotle's work, but there's this overdone piece and this underdone piece. And what we want is to be, in the middle. So the average Joe on our team, and I mean that with all love, can respond to us. Like, not too much energy, but not no energy.
Right.
But energy.
Or you don't want to come off like a robot, which sometimes I'm guilty of doing, but you also don't want to come off as being over the top and fake. You want to be somewhere in that sweet spot.
That's right. That's exactly right. And the thing about leaders, is after you start to study personality and you start to study character and really slow down and give people feedback around their character and around the way they show up, you start to get in tune with, like, I can be one way with one person on my team. Like, like if I was on John's team, if I was on your team, mm-hmm. I would need you to pretend, and I mean that for real, to be enthusiastic if you come off robotic. Right. Like, you'd be like, I'm going to go talk to Nicole, so I'm about to be enthusiastic. Watch me. But I need you to come into my world and be like, Nicole, the project, how's it going? Because that's my energy. So the leader brings that to me. Now, if you're going to go in and talk to George down the hallway, and he is the complete opposite of Nicole, you're going to walk in the door. George, do you have it done? Yes. Okay, great. Have a nice day. Out. Mm-hmm. You got to learn to adapt when you're a leader to the people that are on your team. That's a piece of integrity as well, I think.
Yeah, I think you can do that. Some people will say, well, then you're being fake, but I think you can do that without being fake. You still be your genuine self.
Yeah, and I think really, and this may sound weird, but it's almost like how you love people. If you really love people, as you do the golden rule, which is do unto others, but then there's the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they want to be done unto. And a leader has to be savvy enough to know how to kind of show up for the different people on their team.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we've got integrity. So what is the N?
The N is next right steps. And so this is the ultimate question, right, that we want to ask ourselves all the time, right? So, for example, if the positive focus, I talked about the positive focus. So there's the positive focus. So the positive focus is like I'll read you one that I have on my sheet from this week. Okay, it says, so I attended an International Coaching Federation program last week and met 3 really cool ladies. So that's a great thing to celebrate, right? Positively, yay. But then the question is, what's the next right step? How can you take that good positive energy and move it forward, right? So in this case, with those 3 ladies, I wrote down on my list of things to do this week, I'm going to write them all a handwritten card, right? And I'm going to stick my business card in there and say, it was great to meet you, right? So I'm putting this good energy out into the world. So, always asking yourself the next right step. And I think, too, with leading people, so like if I had one of my people come to me and say, Nicole, I got this done, I slow my jets, I, give them feedback, and then I say, well, what is our next right step? Because I don't know about you, John, but a lot of the people that I coach and I work with, they're pretty complacent about where they are and their performance. And so I think great leaders always say, well, what else? Yeah. But you got to be in a great relationship to keep pushing people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people that listen to this, they are trying to move to that next step, and they are, they're not complacent with where they're at. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening to this.
Right? Yeah. Oh, I love people who listen to podcasts. They're a weird, strange, fabulous breed.
Yes, we are. All right, and then the E, which is our last of the S.H.I.N.E.
Yeah. So I have this thing where I think the energy again that you bring to anything is the name of the game. So there are actually 6 energies that a human being needs to pay attention to, and so you can kind of like tap your body as you do this. But like if you tapped your head, you have intellectual energy. So there's this author called. Peter S.H.I.N.E. So I don't know if you've ever heard Peter S.H.I.N.E., but he has this book called The 5th Discipline. So that's book number 3. So Peter S.H.I.N.E. the fifth discipline, he talks about how leaders need to start what we call learning organizations, right? So, it's like not only do we have vibrant coaching, but vibrant coaching in and of itself is full of people who learn and change and shift and morph and get better. So it's kind of a philosophy. And so, the intellectual energy is kind of like, what are we learning as a team? So, a good example of this is a long time ago, I went to a live seminar before podcasts because I'm 51. But a long time ago, we used to go to live events. And at this event, this guy said that he sat down with his people every morning at 8 o'clock and brought Egg McMuffins. And they listened to a book on cassette. Okay, listen to that, on a cassette. You might want to Google that. It's an interesting thing.
What is a cassette?
But he said, like, he said he brought the English muffin or the Egg McMuffins, and they played a cassette and they took notes and they talked about it and had coffee together every morning. I was like, oh my God, that's genius. To get your team to do that together. And like, they loved it and they all learned so much and they applied what they learned. So that's intellectual. Then there's emotional energy. And you've heard of emotional intelligence before. We could talk for hours about that. Yeah, but that's a whole thing. And then there's spiritual energy, and that could be religious, which in my opinion is a very good thing. But but then there's also spirit in terms of like esprit de corps, right? Like, so go team, right? Mm-hmm. So there's spiritual energy. Then there's physical energy, and I know that you're totally into this. You're a runner. And so, you know that, like, I cannot sit here and do leadership work all day if I feel bad in my body, right? So I got to run, I got to eat something decent, and then I got the right energy. And then there's social energy, which is the number one energy that the leader needs to worry about. Again, what is it like to experience me? Social energy is huge. What are my relationships like? And then the final energy is money. And to your point where that guy was saying, you were saying, but it's the money. People leave because of the money. Mm-hmm. That has been proven time and time again in studies to not be number one reason why people stay or go. It's like down the list, like number 6 or something.
Yeah, what's number 1? Was it the boss?
Yeah, it was the boss.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But, financial energy too, though. I mean, it's really hard. And I don't know, you've probably experienced this, but I've had people on my team that their money is messed up at the house. Back at the ranch, they're in debt. This is going on. They're getting a divorce. They're doing whatever. And it's very challenging to lead somebody who is financially in, serious throes, because then the money affects their intelligence, their intellect, their spirit, their physical. Yeah. So, one of the things we don't do in business that we need to do is we need to teach people how to budget, not only the money of the company, but we also need to teach them to budget their own money.
Yeah, that's one thing I did at Winthrop. I was teaching a senior design, information design course. And so it has nothing to do with budgets or money. But I spent an entire class talking nothing about personal finance. I just wanted to make sure people knew, they should start retirement funds now. Don't wait till you're, 50 to start planning for retirement. And we went through all these steps of personal finance. And one of the main reasons I did that is because my team at the time, I don't know something just struck me. I said, I probably should talk to my team a little bit about, setting up for retirement, because the company I was with at the time, they did a dollar for dollar matching for 401k for up to 5%. Had really good benefits.
Oh my gosh.
So I sat down and I talked to the people about it, using it. And at the time I had 6 people on my team, and only 2 of them were putting anything away in that 401k. Only 2.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The other ones were one of the guys. I had an employee that had been with the company for 9 years and had not put away any retirement whatsoever. And I was like, how much money you just left on the table? Just by just put away the minimum, the 5% that they'll match. Just do just that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then they're like, well, then if you want to get it out, you get penalized. Well, that's the whole point. You don't want to get it out.
Yeah, you don't need to get it out. You want to wait.
That's right, because you're going to need golf money when you're 65, and you want to have the money, right?
Yeah, you're going to need money for that new hip.
That too. Unless, of course, you're doing all the other energies, right? And you're taking care of your body and doing whatever else. Yeah.
Right.
So all of this stuff leads to what Nicole Greer likes to call a vibrant life. So So we got through them all. That's all.
Yeah, that's great. So let's say we're going through the whole S.H.I.N.E method. We're becoming a better leader. We're focusing on ourselves, being I always like to say you put your oxygen mask on first. You're taking care of yourself first, and you're taking care of your team. And now we want to go out and actually not just lead those around us, but get a management position or a position where we can lead other people. I know your company works with folks as far as recruitment and personal branding and helping themselves be in that position. What are some advice you can give to someone? Let's say I've been a team lead, but I want to get into management. I'm not sure what the next steps are.
Okay, so the next steps is to let somebody know you want to go up in the company. Okay, I talk to senior leaders all the time in my recruiting process, and they are looking around and they're like, we don't have anybody that's ready to be promoted. Now, I have to think to myself, really? But the problem is that like the people who are looking to be promoted are not speaking up, and the people who are looking to promote somebody are not really paying that close attention. It's only when they get an empty box on their organizational chart that they go, oh, we better find somebody, right? So, the leaders need to do succession planning, and the people who are wanting to get promoted need to speak up and say they want to get promoted. Now, the ideal would be that I say I work for you, John, and I say, John, I want to be promoted. Like, what do I do? That you would actually be able to help me do that, right? Like the leader would be prepared to say, Nicole, you're not ready yet, but you need to learn these 3 things, and I need to see these 2 character traits out of you, and you need to get your reports in on time. Maybe if you work on those 6 things, you could get promoted, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be the ideal relationship where we could do truth-telling, honesty, and candor between people. But in order to get yourself where you want to go, I would say to look at the job description ahead of you and make sure you have all those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as a boss, I remember at my last company, I had talked to my team about, do any of you guys want to move into management? And I was surprised that one person said, yeah, that's really what I want to do. I'm like, you've worked for me for 3 years. You've never mentioned it. You've never mentioned that that's something you're interested in, And I think some people are just afraid to tell their boss that, hey, I want your job someday, But I think as a good leader, that's your job, is to grow new leaders, is to grow people to take your position one day, whether it's because you retire, because you move up or move out. That's the way to leave the company in a better place than it is right now.
Absolutely. And I tell you, there is this like weird fear out there, and there are some bosses that are like that, like they're scared that the young whippersnapper is going to take their job or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you, I think that the number one thing that makes you look great in any company is developing other people. And so learning to develop folks is huge. In fact, I don't know, what the policies are where you work, but, in particular with different companies I work with, I go in, oftentimes the performance review process is a hot mess, and we don't have anything organized around it. But I personally believe that leaders all on their own should at least quarterly sit down and have what I call a one-on-one with each of the people on their team. So like do something nice and like take somebody, for the Egg McMuffin I was talking about, or take them to lunch and say, you're not in trouble. I just want to have a conversation with you about your future and about how things are going. I mean, this check-in can reveal a lot of things. So I'm going to give you book number 4 of this podcast, which is called, hold on, I think his name is Michael Kelly. Don't quote me, but you could Google it. But anyways, the name of the book for sure, though, is The Dream Manager. And The Dream Manager...
Matthew Kelly, yeah.
Did I get it right? Okay, good. So The Dream Manager, this book, basically so there's two types of folks in the world for the most part, okay? So back to my earth, water, wind, and fire. The fires and the winds typically want to get ahead and are pretty, ambitious. Mm-hmm. And then the earths and the waters are pretty, what I would call steady eddies, right? Nothing wrong with either type. Now, everybody wants to be recognized for their achievement. However, You need to have the conversation with the fires and the winds, the ambitious types, so that they know that you are paying attention to them. It's almost like they need your attention. Are you seeing what I'm doing? Are you seeing what I'm doing? Mm-hmm. And if you address that quarterly, you'll get more behavior that preps for the conversation instead of just performance. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever had anybody on your team that's like constantly needing a pat on the back and it drives you crazy?
Yep. I've had many that they're always like, "Do you see that?" And they're always wanting you to. They're pushing for you to say, "Good job." And one of the things that I struggle with as a leader is I don't like to reward mediocrity, and I try really hard not to reward mediocrity. And some people feel like they need their poor performance rewarded, and I want to say, well, that's just part of doing your job. And then whenever they do step outside their comfort zone or do step outside that mediocre performance and do something well, I try to make a big deal of that.
Yeah. So those people that are, wanting the constant, good jobs for getting their, like, you're supposed to turn your work in on time.
Yeah.
About, So, and then, then you've got your waters and your earths that do turn their stuff in on time, don't really need a lot of feedback, but they probably do want to get ahead, but they seem to have a little bit more humility about getting there, right? So you got to have the conversations with both sides. Now, the thing is some people are content to stay in their job they're in. Now, that is so foreign to Nicole Greer's brain. Like, this girl, I'm hardwired to, like, make it happen. And so I can't imagine staying in the same spot for 30 years. But I know plenty of people who do that. And if we didn't have them, we would have a mess, because we need people who want to be, that executive assistant or be that, director of that department for 35 years, because that's what their purpose in the plan for their life is. Now, the thing is, though, is underneath that contentment, they probably have a little dream. And in the Dream Manager, it talked about helping people get to the dream and holding them accountable for getting after it. So, for example, it might be that somebody on your team doesn't want your job, but they do want to run a marathon like John does. So you can, whenever you see them, you're like, did you get your miles in? Mm-hmm. Did you, what kind of shoes you wearing? How long you had those shoes? It's time for a new pair of shoes. Whatever it is that you do around running, it's you holding people accountable. And then again, as a leader, it's like, he really cares. Every time I see him, he asks me about my running. That is so cool.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good stuff. I always feel like when it comes to one-on-ones, I try to have them every couple of weeks. I used to struggle. I'm still struggle some, but I'm doing better at it. Is trying to have empathy when I have those one-on-ones and try to not make it only about the task that you're working on right now. I usually schedule like a 30-minute one-on-one, and I'll book my calendar like 10 minutes prior to that one-on-one, just so that I can I can say something like, I can sit there in my office and think in my head, what is it like to be this person? What was their morning like today? Did they have to get their kids ready to come to school? What are their kids' names? How far was their drive? Did they have to go through traffic? Are they going to be grumpy when they come in? Are they late on some projects that they're working on? Let me go check their status boards. And I try to come up with what mindset is this person going to be in right before I talk to them, so that I have more empathy and I can actually ask them questions about their kids or something else other than work related. Because I think a lot of times when we come into the office, we're so focused on getting the job done and focusing just on work that we forget that the person is a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the number one, thing that leaders can do for their people that is kind of missing out there is like just asking them, what do you need from me? Like, that is a great question, because we just want to get people resourced, right? And a lot of times I'll go into a company, I'll be working with a leader, and then I get to go work with their team, and they're like, well, this is all well and good, but we don't have the money for this. We don't have the time for that, and there's really three things that are resources: time, money, and energy, and so what we're really asking from employees most of the time is energy, because they're going to give us the 8 hours, and we're going to pay them at the end of the week, but we're typically asking them, to bring more energy to the party. And that's, again, where you go back through intellectual. So a great thing for the one-on-ones is just to say, what are you learning? What are you feeling about, which is emotional? Then, what do you think our teamwork is like? Spiritual, esprit de corps. how's everything going? How you feeling in your, I don't know if you would say this to another guy, how you feeling in your body, but
Yeah.
are you feeling good? Is everything okay physically? Are you feeling healthy or whatever? And then socially, who can I put you in contact? Who can I connect you with? And then, financially, it could be that, people are gunning for a promotion or whatever, and you're trying to help them. And, maybe people need help with budgeting or whatever, or you give your 401k talk at the end of the conversation, which is a great talk. I wish more managers would do that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's a lack of that. And I remember I had a boss, several bosses ago, that never gave us one-on-one opportunity to talk to him. It was just that one time a year when you had your review, and it was always, you went in there blind. You had no idea if you were doing a good job or not. And I always feel like before you have that, nothing should be a surprise. You should know exactly how you're going to be rated during that performance review based on the conversations that you've had with your boss and the one-on-ones that you've had leading up to that point.
Yeah, I agree. And the best performance review process that I've seen is where, the person who's getting reviewed fills out a form with a set of questions, and then the leader fills out the same, form with a set of questions, and it's all done ahead of time, and then they come together with it. And when they do, if those two pieces of paper are miles apart, then the leader failed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I don't often see those. Often what I see is like some standard performance review thing that's filled out and handed down, don't miss that, down to that person, and they just look at it. I mean, it's basically like, this is what it is. Deal with it, right?
Yep.
And the reality is that, it should go both ways. The employee should also review the leader.
I agree 100%. I think that's one of the things that is lacking. I don't think enough people review their leaders. I haven't seen it in some of the places I've worked at in the past where I wish I could have reviewed my boss. I didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah. And, there's this thing that's so weird. So let's go down this little bunny trail. I'm going to talk about ego. Can we do that?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit. Have you read that book, Ego's the Enemy?
No, I haven't. Okay,
well, that's book number 5. There's a really good book out there called Ego is the Enemy.
All right.
And it's by Ryan Holiday. And it's cool. The author, he's actually got it tattooed on his arm. And he said he tattooed that on his arm like 2 or 3 years before he ever wrote the book. It was just a statement that he thought was interesting. And I listened to it on Audible probably about a year ago. It's really fascinating. It just talks about how your ego kind of gets in the way of where you really want to go. And that the people that really want to improve and learn, you got to put your ego on the shelf.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you've already said everything I was going to say.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Well, I will add to it. Let me just say this. The thing about ego. Well, this is what I was taught, and I was taught this by Thomas Keating, and he's Dr. Father Thomas Keating. So he's an Episcopalian priest, okay? But he spoke at Harvard, and so, this is like highfalutin education all at the same time, right? So there's this little teeny tiny book number 6, is called The Human Condition, and you can buy it on Amazon. It's like $4.99 or something. It's like a booklet. It's a little teeny booklet. And essentially what he says is that if you look at humans, they're addicted to 3 things. They're addicted to approval, they're addicted to security, and they're addicted to control. And he says, when you have an employee or a leader, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're an egomaniac, or, they're not worried about everyone's best. They're only worried about themselves. Usually it's an issue of security, control, or approval. And you can look at that, and then the ego is engaged. Mm-hmm. When we're not looking out for Nicole and John's best future, it's only John, it's ego, because he's worried, like we were just talking about, like the guy's worried about his job. Some young person's going to take his job if he teaches him all his secrets. That's a security issue.
Yep.
Right? You know, and then we were just talking about how you've got those people on your team that are like, give me a pat on the back, give me a pat on the back. Those are approval addicted people. So, you know, ego, it's one of those three things. So that's how you can check yourself as a leader, you know, also in that kind of reflective things. Like you could ask yourself this question once a week: where did I allow my own need for approval, security, and control mess things up? Right? So that's really huge. Ego's a big deal. But I'm going to get that book and I'm going to read it.
All right, good. Well, this has been a good conversation. I want to be cognizant of your time. Where are some places people can go to find out more about you, more about Vibrant Coaching, and maybe hear some of your talks or some more things that you've talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's real simple. Just go to vibrantcoaching.com and there I'll be. And then when you go there, I have a little blog. I have my own podcast, of course, and then I also have some video on there. I've got a little TED Talk that I did in Hickory, and you know, so funny, John. When I did that with you, the TED Talk, you know, I was like, I'll be surprised if I get, you know, 5,000 views. But I looked at it the other day, it's like over 80,000 people have watched that.
Isn't that awesome? Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. But anyway, so if you go and you listen to it, it goes through the S.H.I.N.E. So if you're like, that was interesting, but you want to see me talk about it, that's where you'll find it. But there's video on there about other stuff too. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, this has been fun. I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can do this again someday.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Great to see you. Send love and kisses to your 3 babies and your wife. Bye.
All right, bye.